ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय राधिकायै प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण गोस्वामिनिति नामिने। श्रीकृष्ण लीला कथने सुदक्षं औदार्य माधुर्य गुणैशयुक्तं वरं वरेण्यं पुरुषं महान्तं श्रीनारायणं त्वं शिरसा नमामि। त्रिदण्डिनां भक्तशिरोमणिं च श्रीकृष्णपादाब्जधृतये हृदि चैतन्यलीलामृतसारसारं नारायणं त्वं सततं प्रपद्ये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्याय नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। श्याम सुंदर शिखंड शेखर स्मेरहास मुरली मनोहर राधिका रसिक मां कृपा निधे स्वप्रिया चरण किंकरीं कुरु। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे तन्नय माम चरणन्तिके। भक्त्या विहीनापराधलक्षै क्षिप्ताश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्यै कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So first of all, I offer my unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of my most worshipable spiritual master, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedant Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of Sachidanand Thakur Shri Bhakti Vinod, by whose causeless mercy we have received this wonderful scripture called Jaiva, and my respects to all the assembled devotees. So, as you know, we are on the fifth chapter of Jaiva. We started it last time, wherein we saw that the news of Lahadi Mahashay having accepted the Vaishnav initiation and the Vaishnav attire, that news came to his hometown of Shantipur, and people started gossiping about it. When his sons came to know about it, then it was decided that the younger son, whose name was Devidas, will go to Godrum and try to bring him back home, because they belonged to the Brahman caste, very rich family. And according to the situation at that time, the Brahmins considered themselves to be the highest strata of society. So they were thinking that this is in fact bad name for our illustrious family, that our father has accepted the Vaishnav order. So when he went there and he started discussing with his father, his curiosity to understand more about Vaishnavism grew. So the last question that he had asked, where we stopped last time, Lahari Mahasaya was explaining to him that the scriptures have a primary fruit, the reason for studying the scriptures and what they are wanting to tell us. But then there are also some secondary fruits by which they try to attract the common man. So Devidas had questioned that if that is the case, then why is it that the scriptures extol the virtues of the secondary results? If the primary result is the most important thing, what is the primary result? To attain Krishna Prem. But then the secondary results, that if you do this particular fast, some of your problems will get solved. So, for example, just a few days ago was Putrada Ekadashi. On Putrada Ekadashi, it is said that if someone fasts on this day and if they don't have children, then they can beget a child, especially a son. So, and this is being explained in Mahabharata. Now, the real purpose of keeping Ekadashi is to progress in bhakti, to attain Krishna Prema. Madhav Tithi Bhakti Janani. But then why do the scriptures say that by keeping the Ekadashi fast, that one will beget the child? Why do they focus on the secondary results? So this was his question. So he explained that the reason is that there are most people who are spiritually unconscious, anudit vivek. They don't have much interest in the scriptures. They don't have much interest in spiritual life. What to talk of attaining Krishna Prem? Now, how to bring these people towards bhakti? So, therefore, Krishna has made this arrangement that there are these secondary results that are given, and most of the people, they initially want something materialistic gain, some material gain. So, attracted by that, they will start following some of these religious principles. So, someone may observe Ekadashi because of the desire to beget a child. And there are many Ekadashis, the 26 Ekadashis that come during the year, and each Ekadashi, it is given, some of the other fruit is described in Mahabharata. So attracted by that, that someone may start observing Ekadashi, but the result will also be that the person is gaining some sukriti, right? Some spiritual currency, right? So sukriti, as we had discussed, is activity that is knowingly or unknowingly done, which is in relation to bhakti. So this is spiritual currency, and when they gain this spiritual currency, when this is accumulated, then he says that then by the association of devotees, one may then start understanding the real purpose of these scriptures. And he says that was the intentions, because the Shastras do not intend such people to remain satisfied with the secondary results. That is not the goal. When a child goes to school, when he goes to kindergarten, the first few days, the teacher really, makes the child comfortable. They will play with the child. She will give candies to the child. They don't start teaching them, 1, 2, 3 or ABC. Just imagine a child goes to kindergarten. He does not even want to go to school, right? He's just a kid. And the teacher behaves with him very strictly and starts teaching him. Then the child would not even want to go back to school, right? So the first business of the teacher is to make the child interested in coming to school. And that's exactly how the scriptures are structured, that first they are trying to get people interested. Okay, for this material gain, if you go and do this puja at the temple, you will get the benefit. So once they start coming, and then there may be some association with the devotees, but the real goal is that they should progress and come to the primary result. So then by the mercy of sadhus, they will come to know of the primary result, which is the Hari Bhajan, and they will develop attraction, which is ruchi, for those results that will awaken bhakti within them. So when Devidas heard, this is what we finished last time. So when Devidas heard this, then he said, then, I understand that what you are saying, but then there's some scriptures that only describe secondary results. They don't even talk of the primary result, as you are saying, love for Krishna. They don't even talk about these things. So then Lahari Mahasaya says, yes, that is correct. And why it is so? Because there are three types of scriptures and they correspond to the eligibility of different human beings. So we had discussed about adhikar, that we all grasp and understand according to our adhikar, which is according to our eligibility. Just like in a class also, there are students who are at different levels of advancement of their brain power, right? Now the teacher, when she teaches, each child understands and grasps differently. So similarly, different, and now in a class, of course, there may not be that much variation, but there are unlimited living entities. Just the population of our earth is over 8 billion people. And if you see, everyone has different inclinations, different level of understanding. So he says, according to their different levels, according to their different natures, what are the natures? Three modes, right? Mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. So according to that also, there are scriptures also which are in these, which describe um, different rituals or different types of worship which are in these three different modes. So which are these? So here he explains. So there are okay, I think hopefully you can see this. Okay. So there are three types of scriptures. Those that are in the mode of goodness, which are called Sattvic. For the examples are Vishnu Puran, Bhagavad Puran, Srimad Bhagavatam. Then scriptures that are in the mode of passion, they are called Rajasic. The examples of these are Brahmand Puran, Brahmavart Puran, Markandya Puran, Bhavishya Puran. So if you read Bhavishya Puran, it actually tells about the future. And there are so many interesting things explained in there, but doesn't really talk deeply about pure bhakti as Bhagavad Puran. Then there are those which are in mode of ignorance, called Tamasic. For example, Shiv Puran and Agni Puran. So there are these different, so these are all Vedic scriptures. They're all written by Maharshi Vedavyas. But at the same time, he's catering to people, humans of different inclinations. Now, why it is done, so that he will also explain now. So he says, if that is the case, so now after hearing this, Devidas says that if that is the case, then how one should understand which scripture to have faith in, and how may those who are less eligible attain a higher destination, right? So someone who is currently in the mode of ignorance, how does he elevate? So then Lahari Mahasaya gives a very, very beautiful answer. And understanding this answer will help us understand how to interact with people of at different levels, and how to have proper understanding of different religions in the world, different faiths, and why different people have attraction to different types of faiths and religions. So he says human beings have different natures and faiths according to their different levels of adhikar. So people have different nature, right? We all see it. We interact with people, in our at work, at home, and you will see that different people have different natures. And is that nature formed? Because of their previous life's sanskars. So when a child is born, then he is carrying impressions from his last life. And those impressions in the last life are based on the activities that they performed, based on the association they had, and those are carried forward. That is why, even though there may be, let's say, three children in the same family, same parents, but they have different nature. And of course, then the type of association they have in this life, then that their natures may further transform. And it is only in the human life that our nature can be purified. That's why human life is so important. So he said, according to this, they have different natures and they have different faiths. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes in chapter 17, verse 4 people who have different types of Shraddha, different types of faith. Faith in the mode of goodness, and they worship demigods. Those who are in the mode of passion, they worship Rakshasas, and those who are in the mode of ignorance, they worship Bhut and Pret, ghosts. So, like this, it describes people in the 3 different modes, what their faith is, what kind of food they eat, what kind of activities they perform. So he says human beings have different natures and different faiths. And people who are impelled primarily by the mode of ignorance, they have a natural faith towards Tamasic Shastras. So it comes naturally to them. They naturally gravitate towards that. That's why you will see some people, they just more interested in, let's say, more dark type of rituals, magic and these kind of things. Then, but those who are devotees, they have no interest in these things. They just want to listen to Bhagavad Katha. They want to hear and chant the holy names. So it is only because those people from the previous lives and the way they are associating in this life, their natural tendency is towards mode of ignorance. So one's belief in a particular conclusion of the scripture is naturally in accordance with one's faith. So this is another important thing. See, we may all hear the discourse, but we will all derive different conclusions based on our eligibility, how much we can understand, what is our inclination towards mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So even though we may hear the same discourse, we will all derive different conclusions. So he says, but if one faithfully carries out the duties for which one has the eligibility, he may come into contact with sadhus and develop a higher adhikar through their association. So very important, he's saying. So whatever you are following, even if you follow that diligently, right, the way the scriptures are made, the way these rituals or the way these different types of worships are prescribed, if one is doing it diligently, then one will come into contact with sadhus, with devotees who will help that person elevate to the next level. Just like a student going to the kindergarten or the first grade, if he simply does his studies diligently, like correctly, and then he will get qualified to go to the next class. And there the teacher will then teach him higher subjects. So, and therefore we see that we may be all born in different circumstances. We were not born in the Vaishnav lineage, right? Even though spiritually we are all eternal servants of Krishna, we are all in one sense Vaishnav, everyone. But when we were born in different places, in different communities. We had different ideas. But because of our previous sanskars and sukriti, and also because whatever we were doing it diligently. I can say that, for example, I used to actually worship, my father asked me to do Hanuman Chalisa when I was young. So prayers to Hanumanji. And I would just do it very diligently, very, very faithfully. I will chant Hanuman Chalisa. And I do have this faith that because Hanuman, he is a great devotee of the Lord, he is himself a great Vaishnav, by his mercy, I was able to meet the devotees. And many, many people have similar experience. So we may be born in a different faith, in a different religion, in a different country. But what he's saying, if one does that diligently, then one comes to this highest understanding of what the scriptures are trying to give, Vishuddh Krishna Prem. So he says, then as soon as a higher adhikar is awakened, one's nature is elevated and one will naturally develop faith in a more elevated Shastra. So again, all of us growing, we have studied different books, we have heard different discourses, and I can certainly say that every one of you had some deep desire somewhere in between in you to understand what is true dharma, and whatever you were doing it very diligently with some faith, you were doing, and that made you qualified to further progress. And I think I once before also, just like my own example, my father similarly used to worship Durga Devi, and again doing it very, very diligently. And I can certainly see that, and Gurudev also said that it is because of what you were doing worship to Durga, and she is Vaishnavi, right? And therefore has to be respected as a guru, as a spiritual master. So this is the, in fact, also the right way to see all the demigods, especially Durga Devi, especially Ganesh ji, especially Hanuman ji. All of them are great devotees. They should never be disrespected. And in fact, they all want that those who are worshipping them, that they somehow arrange to bring them to the next level. Right? So he says now a very important thing. He says the authors of the Shastras were infallible in their wisdom. Very important thing. See how compassionate the Supreme Lord is, how compassionate our great sages are. Just like a teacher in the school is very compassionate. The teacher who's teaching the first grade kids, she herself has been through the university, right? So she has all the degrees. But she is not trying to impose her university level education on those first graders. She understands that they are just beginners. They still need to learn how to hold the pencil. Then they need to learn how to write one, two, then A, B, C, right? So even though she herself knows, probably the highest concepts of mathematics, and she can read big novels, but she is not teaching that to the child. So similarly, the great sages, Maharshi Vedavyas, who wrote all of these scriptures, I listed all these Purans. He wrote all of them. So did he not know what he was describing was not right? Now, of course, when we read about the Bhagavatam, and there the story comes that Maharshi Vedvyas was very despondent. He was sitting in his ashram in Badrinath, and then his Gurudev, Sri Narad Rishi, appeared and asked him, what is the reason of you being so despondent? And he said, I have written so much, but I still can't understand. I'm not feeling happy. And of course, Naraji then told him that by writing so much, you have confused everyone. Now, this narration is for the purpose of explaining that Bhagavatam was finally written, and that has the conclusion. It is Amal Puran. This does not mean that Vyas did not know what he was doing. He did everything on the instructions of the Lord himself. He himself is Shaktavesh Avatar. He's an empowered incarnation. So it's not that he did not know that when he's writing Shiv Puran or Bhavishya Puran and he's giving all those different types of rituals which have nothing to do with Shuddha Bhakti, but it was intentionally written. Why? For this reason. He says, because the authors of the scriptures were infallible in their wisdom. Their wisdom was perfect, but they composed the scriptures in such a way that one will gradually develop higher adhikar, higher eligibility, by carrying out the duties for which one is eligible and in which one naturally has faith. Right? If you have $100, you cannot go and buy a car, right? So let's say you have $500. You can only go and purchase a bike. You cannot go and purchase a car, right? So someone who comes by, seeing you are driving by and you see this person who's on a bicycle, and then you start making fun of him. Oh, why you are driving a bike? See, I'm driving a car. No, that's not the right attitude. That's not what the sages did. So what they did, okay, I will help you to make money so that you will have enough to buy a car. That's how the devotees are so compassionate. They know so much more, but according to our level, they will only share what we can understand and what we can imbibe and what we can have faith in. So he says that's how they wrote the scriptures. It is for this reason that different directives have been given in different scriptures. Faith in the scriptures is the root of all auspiciousness. But he says, therefore, we should have firm faith. Many times, see, this is another, especially those from India, this is a lot of times people have this complaint or argument, oh, there are so many different scriptures and different scriptures talk about different things. In Shiv Puran, Lord Shiva is glorified. In Devi Puran, Devi is glorified. What we should follow, it is so confusing. This is the answer. So this is where the scriptures, and I think I gave this example before also, that unlike a school where every child from kindergarten to the 12th grade, if they're all put in the same class, then how will the teacher teach them? How will they make any progress? The perfect class is when for each person's level education, a curriculum can be designed and they can be taught based on their level, right? So that's how the Vedic scriptures are. That's why they're so vast. They are, so many different detailed explanations in these scriptures. But he says this faith is important, that whatever the scriptures are saying, it is absolutely true. And what they're saying is for a certain reason. Now, it may not apply to everyone, but a person based on his own inclination, his own eligibility, will gravitate to only those instructions of the scriptures which he can understand and he can practice. But doing those diligently, he will come into association of devotees and then progress to the next level. And then he says, Bhagavad Gita is the Mimamsa Shastra, where all this analysis and is given and all the Siddhanta is clearly explained. That's why reading and understanding Bhagavad Gita is so critical. When we have a pot and you pour water in it or something in it, but if the pot doesn't have a base, then everything is going to go up. So that base, that foundation is Bhagavad Gita. Without understanding Bhagavad Gita, one cannot understand the rest of the scriptures. And similarly, Jaiva Dharma, what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is explaining, this is all coming from Bhagavad Gita. So it is very important to have the foundational understanding. So then Devidas, he said, from childhood I have read many scriptures, but now by your grace, I am actually understanding some of it. So then Lahadi Mahasaya said something he quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 8, verse 10, where Lord Krishna is speaking to Uddhav. He's giving instructions, he's answering questions of Uddhav, and he talks about the Avanti Brahman. There he says, Anubhyascha Mahadhyascha Shastrebhya Kushalo Naraha Sarvatah Saram Adyat Pushpebhya Iv Shat Padaha. He gives the example of a bumblebee. He says, just like a bumblebee goes to different flowers, and from each flower it takes some honey, it gathers some pollen, right? And that then comes to its beehive, and that's how it makes some money, makes honey. So similarly, an intelligent person, he takes the essence of all the scriptures. Now he says an intelligent person, not everyone, right? So first we have to have that intelligence. Once we have that level of intellect or discrimination, then we would be able to understand the scriptures correctly, and then only be able to understand the essence from there, right? So just like, Shankaracharya, he spoke so much, he gave so many books, but then end of the day, he said what? Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudmate, Samprapte Sannihiti Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karan, and that all this knowledge will not help you. It is only the name of Hari, name of Govind, chant it, and that will only help. So that is the essence. Someone who understands will be able to take the essence from each of the scriptures. So then Lahadi Mahasaya says a very beautiful thing. He says, my son, I used to call you an atheist. That's why Devidas was not initially wanting to come to his father, because he knew that his father didn't have a very healthy relationship with him. He was always kind of denouncing him and calling him an atheist. So now he says, my dear son, I used to call you an atheist, but now I don't criticize anyone. So this is the quality, or this is the this is the quality of a Vaishnav, a sign of a Vaishnav. In the beginning, when we come to spiritual life and we understand a little bit, then we have a tendency sometimes to look down upon others. We also sometimes criticize others because, but this is only because of our own immature understanding. But when we actually understand this concept that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has just explained, that different people are different level based on their own eligibility, and a Vaishnava very compassionately helps them get to the next level, then there will be no criticism. Then we will not hate anyone. We will not be critical of anyone. We will understand that everyone is situated in their own position. Just like Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that those who are also worshipping demigods, they're doing avidhi purvakam. They're not doing the right thing. But at the same time, don't disturb their faith. Do it, talk to them in a way, speak to them in a way, preach to them in a way that they will slowly elevate and develop a higher eligibility to understand the real mood of the scriptures. So he says, now I don't criticize anyone because faith depends on adhikar. There is no question of criticism in this regard. Everyone is working according to their own adhikar, and they will advance gradually when the time is appropriate. So it is only because of the lack of our own knowledge and lack of our own maturity sometimes, and this happens all the time. Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Shri Prabhupada, he has a book, Science of Self-Realization, and in there an incident is narrated. One, when when he came to the West, and many Western young boys and girls started becoming devotees. Of course, for them all of this was very new, and it was making their life so auspicious, and they were certainly experiencing great joy. And sometimes it does happen that in that zeal they would go out and preach, and sometimes they will come down very hard on others, trying to enforce, saying what we are saying is right and what you're following is wrong. So one elderly lady wrote a letter to Shri Prabhupada, Shri Swami Maharaj, saying that I had this experience with some of your disciples, but they are just like very, very fanatic. They are just really seem like they're almost like arrogant the way they behave. Now Swami Maharaj wrote back very nicely. He said they are kids, they are children, they are immature, because he knew that. But he said at the same time they are enthusiastic and they are trying to carry out my mission. So he certainly protected what they were doing, but at the same time recognized that when one does not has this level of maturity, then sometimes one may, out of their zeal, behave in a way, right, which may sound very critical of others. So he says, now I don't criticize anyone. And he says, you are a scholar, and since your statements are in accordance with your adhikar, there is no fault in them. He says, now I recognize that whatever you say and do is based on your eligibility. Now, when Devidas heard this, he was very impressed. See, many times, and this is the art of preaching, right? If you go and criticize someone, the person will completely shut himself off. But if you accept whatever his ideas are, and in a nice way try to explain to them, and based on simple way interact with them, then they will become more open to listening. So now Devidas, who in the beginning was not very interested in speaking to his father, now when he heard this from his father, he said, well, I before thought that there were no scholars in Vaishnavism, that Vaishnavas were people who were just very emotional. They were just fanatic. And many times people say that, devotees or Vaishnavas are very fanatic. He says, I used to think that they have just taken some portion of the scriptures, but they don't really understand the scriptures in detail. But today, what you have explained to me, in this just a short conversation, he said that it has dispelled my misconceptions. Now I have faith that some of the Vaishnavas have truly understood the essence of the Shastras. Not necessarily everyone, but he says, I do now feel that some Vaishnavas have actually understood what the scriptures are saying. Now, of course, he himself did not know that much Devidas, but just the demeanor of his father and the way he was explaining, he became very attracted. So Lahari Mahasaya said, well, my dear son, you may call me a fanatic, that's fine. But whatever you like, it's fine with me. But my Gurudev, my spiritual master, he performs bhajan in the next kutir, in the next cottage right next to mine. And he's the one who has given me these instructions. So whatever I understand today, it's only by his mercy. And whatever I've understood by his mercy, I have explained to you. But if you want to understand in more detail, then I can introduce you to him. But he says you may inquire from him in a devotional mood. Right? So he knew that his son was very expert in Nyaya Shastra. So Nyaya Shastra is again part of the Indian the Vedic one of the six different schools of thought, or and there in the Nyaya Shastra, it's all about logic, how to debate. And Devidas was a teacher of Nyaya Shastra, so he was very good at debating. He very good at arguing. So he said, "Well, I can introduce you to my Gurudev, but inquire in a devotional mood. Tat vidhi pranipaten pariprashnen sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninah tattva darshinah." Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if one really wants to understand spiritual subject matter, then what is the mood? Tat vidhi pranipaten pariprashnen sevaya. Approach an advanced devotee and then render service unto him and inquire submissively. Submissively means in a mood of surrender, in a mood of genuinely understanding, not just simply arguing. So he took his son to the next cottage where Vaishnav Das ji was residing, introduced him, and then came back to his own kutir and he started chanting Harinam. So now when Vaishnav Das ji met Devi Das, he inquired from him, my dear son, what is the extent of your education? So he very again nicely interacted with him. And this is again how the devotees or acharyas, they with great love and compassion, they treat people like us who are just beginners. When we met with Gurudev in the beginning, he and always the beginning and always actually he was so much full of love. But when we would go, he would first inquire about how you are, is everything okay, how's your work going on, how's your education going on, so that to make everyone feel very comfortable. When we'll go from Delhi, he would quickly send some brahmacharis downstairs to the market and say, go and get some fresh squeezed juice for them. So like this, making then everyone very comfortable. And then he would, of course, ask if you have any questions. And then we will, sit with him and ask all the questions we had. So similarly, Devidas then said, oh, I have studied Nyaya Shastra, Muktipad, Siddhant Kusumanjali. These are different sections of Nyaya Shastra. So Vaishnav Das ji said, oh, you have made a lot of effort. You have labored diligently in your study. Please give me an example of what you have learned. So then Devidas says, Atyanta dukh nivritti ev mukti. The cessation of all material miseries is known as mukti or liberation. And this is the main understanding of most of the aspirants of religion, where their goal is to attain liberation. And what is liberation in their understanding is when all the miseries that we are undergoing, all the different types of miseries, they come to an end. In fact, it is only for the alleviation of our miseries that generally people first come to the path of religiosity, or they turn towards the scriptures. So then he says, one should always endeavor to obtain mukti, which is defined in the statement from Sankhya Darshan. I am seeking that liberation through faithful adherence to my prescribed duties. So this was the conclusion that he said he has understood by his diligent study of Nyaya Shastra and Smriti Shastras. So then Vaishnav Das ji said, well, just like what you are saying, I have also studied these books and I also used to aspire for mukti. So when he said, I used to aspire, then Devidas says, well, does that mean that now you don't aspire for mukti? That was very surprising for him. Because according to him, anyone who is in this path of religion, following any spiritual path, that person's goal should be just liberation. So Vaishnav Das ji says, well, my dear son, let's discuss what is mukti. You tell me what is your understanding of mukti or liberation. So then Devidas says, he says he has read Nyaya Shastra and then he has some understanding. He has not read Vedanta, but he has some understanding of Vedanta. So Vedanta, as we have discussed before, is the philosophy given by Sripad Shankaracharya. So he says Nyaya Shastra. In Nyaya Shastra, it says that the Jiva, the living entity, and the Brahman, they are distinct and they are separate from each other. So since they are separate, he says, I am not able to understand what is the concept of mukti according to Nyaya Shastra. It is not clear from the point of view of Nyaya. Because when Jeev and Brahm are separate and Jeev is the one suffering from all the miseries, so how will his miseries be removed? I don't understand. But from the perspective of Vedanta, there it says that the Jeev and Brahm, they are non-different. And it refers to the attainment of non-differentiated Brahm. In other words, the Jiva's attainment of the state of oneness. This is clear from one point of view. So see, this is what general understanding is. We actually grew up also with the same understanding that Atma, or we, the soul, will merge with the Paramatma, or the all-pervading Parbrahm, and that is liberation, and that's it. That's all. Whatever we are doing, it's only for that purpose. And never really thought really too much about it, that what does it really mean? But most people just say, oh, that's liberation, because in that oneness, there is no duality, there is no second person, and therefore there is no misery of any type. And that's what we want to achieve, mukti, liberation. So then Vaishnava Das says, my dear son, I have also studied Shankar's Vedanta commentary for 15 years. And I remained a sannyasi for many years. My goal was also to attain mukti. And a long time I spent meditating on what Shankaracharya had stated. And the four main statements of Shankar philosophy, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvam Asi, Pragyanam Brahm, Ayam Atma, Jnanam like this, Ayam Atma Brahm. So these are the four Mahavakyas, or the grand statements of the Shankar philosophy. But he says, I came to the conclusion that this is all newly fashioned. This is not what the scriptures are actually saying. These are all misunderstood. So then Devidas says, why do you consider it recent and antagonistic view? So Vaishnav Das ji says, well, an experienced man cannot easily convey to others what he has realized through practical examination. What he's trying to say is, well, unless you go through the process I have gone through, I cannot just give that experience to you. Right? So you have to go through the process to come to this understanding that what the Shankar philosophy is saying is actually not correct. So then Devidas saw that, well, this person knows what he's saying, right? So what the statements he's making, and he himself, Devidas, he was a teacher of Nyaya Shastra. He had himself never studied Vedanta. So he asked Vaishnav Das ji, am I fit to study Vedanta? And Vaishnav Das ji said, well, you are a Sanskrit scholar and you can easily learn Vedanta if you get a qualified instructor. So then Devidas said, well, can you teach me? Because he knew that Vaishnav Das ji was a Vedantist. He was a sannyasi, has gone through a detailed understanding, study. So he says, can you be my teacher? Can you teach me? So then Vaishnav Das says, the fact is that I am a servant of the Vaishnavas. There is nothing for me besides this. Paramhans Babaji Maharaj has mercifully instructed me to chant Harinam constantly, and I'm doing just that. See, a sannyasi who has such deep knowledge, he's saying that all I want to do is chant the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Because he has understood this is the essence. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when during his younger age pastimes, when he was in Navadvip, he was called Nimai Pandit. He was such a great scholar. Of course, he is the Supreme Lord himself. And such a great scholar, he was running his own Sanskrit grammar school. And he would defeat anyone and everyone in argument. To that extent that even the great Pandits who were much older to him, when they would see him coming, they would just completely turn around and go a different way, because they were so scared that if a Nimai Pandit starts talking to us, then we will be completely defeated. Now, when he went to Ishwapuri Pad, when he went to Gaya, there he met Ishwapuri Pad, and then he came back, and now he was completely absorbed in chanting the holy name. And he said he was completely changed. Now he was a different Nimai. So he said, my spiritual master saw that I was a complete fool, not qualified to understand anything. So he told me just to chant the holy name. That does not mean that the Vaishnavas don't know. So they actually know much more than even the greatest scholars. But they have understood that the essence of all of it is to chant in a mood of loving devotion, in a mood of surrender. And then he says, I have so little time. I don't want to waste my time in the discussion and explanation of this Shankara philosophy. And even Rupa Goswami has forbidden the Vaishnavas to read Shankaracharya's Sharirik Bhashya. So he says, I do not want to spend the time going through it in detail to explain to you, but he says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Jagannath Puri, there, so most of you have heard this pastime, when Mahaprabhu went to the temple of Lord Jagannath. Seeing Lord Jagannath, he fainted. There's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was a great Vedantist, great scholar, and probably the most famous scholar of Vedanta all over India at that time, with thousands and thousands of disciples. He saw Mahaprabhu and he could see that he was a very great elevated personality. He brought him to his home. And when Mahaprabhu came to his external consciousness, and he requested him to stay at his home. And then Mahaprabhu would next day, his other followers also came who were following him to Jagannath Puri. They came, and next day they would go in the streets chanting Mahamantra. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told Mahaprabhu that this is not what a sannyasi should do. A sannyasi should be very grave, should conduct himself in a very, very grave way, and he should spend time studying the Vedanta. So out of humility, Mahaprabhu said, okay, you teach me Vedanta. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days spoke. Mahaprabhu didn't say anything. And then afterwards, when Sarvabhauma Acharya questioned him that, are you actually understanding anything? Then Mahaprabhu said, yes. When you speak the Sanskrit verses, they're clear like as sun, crystal clear like the sun shining in the sky. But when you give the interpretations, it's like dark clouds cover that sun. And then he explained to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya what the real meaning of Vedanta was. So that was at that time was copied by, so Gopinath Acharya, who was the husband of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's sister, and he was a follower and associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He noted everything down, what Mahaprabhu was saying. So Vaishnav Das ji is saying that based on that, Sripad Kavi Karnapurna, he has written what Mahaprabhu gave the explanation of Vedanta. If you can go and get a copy of that, then I can explain to you what Mahaprabhu explained about Vedanta. So Kavi Karnapurna was another great devotee. He was the son of Shivanand Sen, another associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he was just a young baby, when he was taken to Mahaprabhu, and Shivanand Sen put him at the baby at the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. So this baby went and started sucking the toe of Mahaprabhu. So everyone said, Sadhu, Sadhu. Everyone was very joyous to see and how Mahaprabhu gave his mercy to this baby and blessed him. So from the age of 7 years only, Kavi Karnapurna, he was named Kavi Karnapurna because of the beautiful poetry that he wrote, which was so melodious to even hear for the ears of the Lord himself. So he wrote very beautiful scriptures like Chaitanya Chandrodaya, Chaitanya Charanamrit. He wrote Gaur Ganodesh Deepika. So this was the time. So this whole pastime of what is explained in Jaiva Dharma is happening at the time when Kavi Karnapurna was there. So this is a few years, let's say 40, 50 years after Mahaprabhu had left. So, so he said, you can go and make a copy of it and then bring it. Those days, there were no printing presses, so you had to actually write down and make a copy of a scripture. So Devidas said, I will try. But then a doubt came in his mind that, I will make so much effort to go and make a copy of that book. I'll have to first go to that place and make a copy. But he says, are you sure that by reading that, I will be able to ascertain the true meaning of Vedanta by studying this Vaishnav commentary? So then Vaishnav Dasji says, well, I have read many commentaries of Vedanta. Of course, the Sharirik Bhashya of Shankar. I've also read the commentary written by Sri Ramanujacharya. But he says, when I read the commentary of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I could not find anything that was superior to that. So that explanation given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the conclusion, or is the most clear understanding and explanation of Vedanta. There can be no doctrinal dispute in Bhagwan's own explanation of the sutras, for his commentary accurately represents the full import of the Upanishads. So when the Lord himself is giving an explanation, then how can there be any deficiency in that? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedahisha sarvai aham vedyah Vedankrit ved videv chaha aham. That the purpose of the Vedanta is to know me, right? So, and when he himself is explaining the meaning of the Vedanta, how can there be any commentary which will be superior to it? So he says, if one presents this explanation of the sutras in proper sequence, it is certain that his explanation will be respected in any assembly of learned scholars. So when Devidas heard this, so he became confident. He was very pleased to hear this, because he really wanted to understand Vedanta, and he wanted to make sure that if I make the effort of bringing that copy, that I would get a proper understanding of the Vedanta. So offering his obeisances to Vaishnav Dasji and promising that he will go and try and get a copy and then come back, he then went to the kutir of his father and shared with him the conversation that he had with Vaishnav Dasji. So when Lahari Mahasaya heard this, he was very delighted and replied, he said, Devi, you have acquired a great deal of education, but now you can try to attain the highest destination, which is the ultimate benefit for all living beings. So he said, well, you have been you have spent a lot of time to acquire the understanding of Nyaya Shastras and different other scriptures. But now it is time for you to understand the real meaning of all those scriptures. So, this is what is the ultimate benefit for all living beings. So, you have a golden opportunity. Don't waste it. So we'll stop here, and then we will continue. It's almost time. We will continue next time from what Devidas says to his father, because of course he had come to take him back to their village. So what he says, we will study it next time. So we'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions or comments. So you can unmute if you have any question or. Yes, Ashok Prabhu.
No questions, Prabhuji. I felt very bad that we are all staying super quiet and you are eagerly waiting.
No. It's perfectly fine if there are no questions. That's perfectly fine. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to send anytime. And I'm hoping that everyone, you are reading Jaiva Dharam along as we are going through the book. That will help everyone. So if you continue reading, that will be very helpful. Okay.
FYI, I also fed it to ChatGPT. And then, so another way of like, I kind of ask questions. I will summarize. I will say sometimes, summarize chapter 4. It does a very beautiful way of summarizing it. And then I can even pick on, I'm just saying for others as well, right? So and then I can say deep dive on this topic, and then it goes to the book. I uploaded the PDF. It goes to the book and it fetches the details, and then it deep dives on the topic as well. So it's easy way of learning for someone who is very lazy like me to read the book.
So that's probably a good use of ChatGPT. No, that's true. The only thing I will say when you're using ChatGPT, because or any one like that, sometimes it because it creates new things, right? So if it is strictly based on you give the book, then it will do the right thing. But many I've seen, it comes up with wrong quotations from scriptures. If you ask it a general question, then it will come up with verses which are nowhere in the scriptures. I don't know how it does that, but
So there is a way that you stop ChatGPT from using
right?
OpenAI and hallucination.
Yes.
So hallucination is different, but if you say use OpenAI, then it is going to go to the internet and fetch whatever is not related to us.
That's what I was cautioning against, that if you're giving it a specific book, then it's perfectly fine. So yeah, that's one way of trying to get the summary of what's in Jaiva. But I think we should try to read the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given each chapter, word by word, because that gives the real essence of the philosophy. Okay, so anyone has any other questions or comments? Okay, so then we'll stop here. Thank you everyone for joining. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.